Hey everybody, let's see how this works. Hopefully it will work out okay. This is my backyard here in San Diego. So this might be a little bit challenging with a wind and neighbor a ways away is cutting trees, and so we'll see how this works out. Casual attire day, just got out of the pool playing with the dogs. So I thought with no discussion board scheduled this week, you wouldn't mind me being a little casual also. Let's talk about last week, the idea of technology. Boy, I tell you what, a lot of stuff coming up for officers, things that they need to be aware of and be up to date on, especially when it comes to technological advances. Hopefully that you saw that there was quite a bit of legal implications too when you start using technology and that right to privacy. We talked about right to privacy a couple of weeks ago. Didn't really stick with a lot of people though. And the right to privacy is that idea of has the person done something subjectively to establish a right of privacy, and is that a right that the public or society would seek to protect? So with that in mind, you have to take a look at that and see if that's the case. And that's one way that you can look at technology. In cats, one of the things with cats was whatever you do in public is public information. Now, whatever you do in public is public information unless it's derived from technology that is accomplished through some use of a trespass. Pretty different than the original cats. Something for you to think about, especially if you're law school bound. That will be something that you're going to see, I can guarantee it. A law school professor is going to love that, and that'll be one of your exams. So as you look at scientific advances, make sure that you understand the legal definitions under the Fourth Amendment and their implications. One that's burgeoning is a case where the police accessed public databases to obtain DNA profiles, familial DNA profiles, and then they use that to identify a person who was later being prosecuted for murder. So, the public has the profile. What's the level of privacy that has, and when you give that to the government, are you doing so with the concept or the idea that they will pass it on to someone else? So wind's picking up a little bit. So with that in mind, there's something that you need to be aware of, I guess, is the best way to put that. So moving on to hiring. I've had a ton of experience in the hiring process. Hired a whole slew of people in the course of my career. And I've done hundreds of pre-employment interviews, the first interview in the process. Looked at backgrounds, looked at polygraphs, made recommendations on hiring decisions. And quite honestly, my hiring thought is pretty conservative in what I think is a good hire or not. So that really affects how how that hiring is done and whether or not that person's going to have a good chance of being successful. So if you go on the internet, you're going to be able to see a ton of recruitment videos. And some are kind of cool. There's a lot of the rough and tumble, running, jumping, climbing trees kind of videos out there. And certainly law enforcement can be a physical job. But remember, we've done had a lot of discussion here about the idea of community policing and what community policing is really involving. So with that, look at that recruitment video and kind of see how much that's being developed in the recruitment process. A lot of expectations of police. Look at what's going on with the Parkland shooting. I don't know enough about it to make a real good comment on it. But the expectation is that the cops show up, there's gunfire in a building. Without any further intelligence, they'll just run inside and confront the issue. And that may be something that, the military does. And remember, we talked a lot about use of military equipment earlier in the semester, and many thought that that was a really bad idea, and the idea or the thought of developing that military concept in police was not good. But yet, that's going to be a military response. I mean, you're going to be going in there with the idea of becoming involved in a violent armed confrontation, and good chance you're not going to go home. You and your family has to be prepared for that. So we're going to hire guys, men and women, that will go out and do that and understand that's what's expected of them, and they will do it efficiently. They won't be making mistakes when they're doing the entries. They're not going to be shooting the wrong people. They're going to be professional, cool, calm, and collected, and then also be able to go out and play basketball with the kids in the schoolyard and make and develop relationships there. That's quite a bit. And then an ever-expanding concept of what the police are actually going to do. I posted something from the RAND Corporation on hiring, and they even recognize that idea that that the role of the police is rapidly expanding. No longer is it fight crime, prevent crime, traffic control, but it's taken on a lot of different social aspects also. As you look at this week, think about the idea of the community policing officer versus a professional era officer. Two different kind of people, but often we hire people thinking community policing, but we hire a professional model mentality. So it's so much more challenging now. I can't even tell you. The hiring process itself, that begins the second you make contact with the police or with a recruiter or some other person regarding a potential hire. And certainly once you submit your application. There's, you figure for every 100 people that apply, maybe 4 will get hired. And it could be less. You could have one person out of that, depending upon how badly people are needed, what the staffing levels are, what the mandates from city council are, and what the past background of that department is when it comes to the hiring of people. So let's talk about the steps, really quick stuff, hopefully. Hopefully. First, PowerPoint stuff. It has the individual steps, just a couple of things on each one. When you do the written, don't overthink it. It's built for a GED. It's not built for a college age or college graduate. So it's easy to get tripped up in that. You're going to be stressed in the academy with physical agility, but you're also going to have to pass a physical exam. You can find the California exam on the internet and see a couple of videos of it. I think Anaheim and Huntington Beach have videos. So you can see what the physical agility is. But for your physical stuff, start now. Upper body strength, cardiovascular. Absolutely necessary component, at least through the academy. And then when you get in that fight for your life, which you will, you're going to really wish that you were just a little bit better than you are. It's like I used to tell my kids when they were, playing sports. The boys were playing baseball and were competitive. Say, right now somewhere, out there somebody is practicing, and when they meet you head to head, they'll beat you. And it's kind of the same thing here, is that somehow somebody out there is getting in better shape. They're going to do evil things, and when they meet you, you got a good chance of getting taken. So you have to be on top of that game. Your next thing you're going to have is going to be your interview. And you do the interview, think about what a cop does, on a day-to-day basis, and then what they might have to do. And make sure that you're up to that, because you'll probably see questions in that direction. Also get to know a little bit about the city. Look for news events regarding that city or the county in law enforcement. Are they dealing with a use of force issue? Because that's going to come up in some fashion. Are they dealing with a community relations issue? That's going to come up. Homelessness. California's got a burgeoning homeless problem that the expectation of how that is dealt with is much, much different now than it was in when I was in law enforcement. So, understand what the city's role is in that, because you could very well see questions about that. Once you get through the oral interview, the next thing is that your background. You're going to fill out a background packet. Some places just do an interview, which is pretty tough, because you can get let go because you don't have sufficient information in your background. If you have a background interview, I would go to the internet, I'd download a background packet from somebody, and I would develop all of those questions completely and thoroughly. Bring it with you, and then if you're asked, so tell me, where did you live in the 3rd grade? Well, you're able to say, yeah, I have that information right here. Yeah, I lived at whatever, walk and don't walk in Norwalk. Sorry. But, you'll have that information. One thing to think about in the background is this presence of social media. I really caution social media, being involved with it. And the reason is because you just don't know how far they're going to, a background investigator is going to look. I've heard of some agencies that now ask for access to your face space or my book or whatever pages. And with that in mind, you may have some friend on there that's talking shenanigans, and just because he's a comedy jokester, but you're going to have to answer to that. Well, how much do you know this guy? Did you know that he had these viewpoints? When's the last time you saw him? So I would really think about my footprint on social media, just because it's easily checked, and it gives away a lot of personal information. When you do your personal history statement for your background, make sure you're complete. If you don't know an answer to something, or if it doesn't apply, then put in there does not apply, DNA or something of that nature. The next big step is going to be the polygraph. And what happens is you have a pre-poly examination, pre-poly questionnaire. Usually you sit down at home and fill these out. Some states, I saw one online from, I want to say it was like Kentucky, and it was time that you had to fill this thing out. So, you got to be careful on that and make sure that you are putting down the answer you intend to. And here's the purpose of the pre-poly. The purpose of the pre-poly is to eliminate as many people as possible. Remember, we've got this funnel. Starts at 100, and then it comes down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people at the bottom. And we want to get through this as quickly as possible, because all of these people up here cost an agency money. So let's move it down. So your pre-poly is to eliminate people. And you see some amazing things on pre-polys, amazingly silly things that people did, and then why they think they're going to get into law enforcement. I mean, I have no concept. This is not a matter of finding somebody that knows the criminal element because maybe they dabbled in it a little bit. If that's your thought process, you might want to go look for something else to do, because you're not going to get anywhere in law enforcement. When I'm hiring, I'm going to hire the best people that I can. And if I have to run short, I run short. As soon as you start to lower your standards, you have problems. If you think about that, look at LAPD, Rampart Division, Rafael Perez. Prime example. LAPD did his background. He had a prior burglary conviction as a juvenile. They didn't want to hire him. He appealed to their Civil Service Commission. Civil Service thought that he met a lot of the things that they wanted to see in a police officer, so they mandated that he be hired. He gets hired and is the lead person of one of the largest scandals. I mean, and it's like movie kind of Denzel Washington training day shooting people kind of scandals. But he also took down a whole bunch of really good officers that were not involved in shenanigans. So that's what you're going to see. Get past the poly. There's going to be a discussion with staff about hiring the people, and then it goes to a chief's interview. The chief gets your entire package. He'll look it over and have a sit-down interview with you. It used to be that this was a chance for the chief to tell you just exactly how bitchin' he was or she was. I'm the chief, and did I tell you I'm the chief? And after my years of experience in law enforcement, I'm still the chief. And not so much anymore. Now the chief really views this as being an important part of the process. And they're going to ask you tough questions. Questions about, what do you know about the city? And not just, well, it's got 112 officers and it's this and that. But no, what do you know about the city? What do you know about the demographics? What do you know about the crime? What do you know about nonprofit organizations? What do you know about the neighborhoods? How's the city divided? Do you know if there's gang structure? See if I lost you or not. So did you know if there's gang structure or not? Let me just make sure that this is still recording. And it appears it is. Okay. So what do you know about gang structure in the city? And it could be anything with churches. I mean, it could be anything. So make sure you have a good knowledge of the city. And then also this idea of your own strengths and weaknesses and be able to deal with those. Get past the chief's interview, and then it's time for a conditional job offer. This is not an offer for money. You're not going to get paid with a conditional job offer. All this does is allow the police department to go to or send you to the medical and the psych. And medical examination is very thorough. The purpose behind a medical examination, it is to limit workers' comp claims. Workers' comp costs police departments, cities, counties, tons of money. And the reason is because people get hurt. And the best we can do to avoid getting people hurt is to have good, solid, people starting off. The psych, usually there'll be 2 exams and then an interview, 2 or 3 exams. And this could be like the draw picture. Definitely you're going to see the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. You'll see that. And then you'll see, some other interpretive psychological test. So those are going to be the things. If you get past those, then the police department's going to look at you to decide whether or not they're going to hire you. Hopefully you've kept up your physical training, because now the next thing you're going to see is probably the academy. Most academies now run a pre-academy. And in that pre-academy, you'll get told the rules. Make sure you take good notes. Make sure you look to follow the rules. If the rules say each recruit will have 4, number 2 pencils sharpened in their possession at all times in the classroom. It's not, that isn't there to be funny. That's there because they want you to learn to follow rules. So make sure you do that, and pay close attention. Academies generally, especially if you go to one that is held at a junior college like Golden West, will have sponsored and non-sponsored academies. Here's how this works out. An academy will have non-sponsored people, meaning people that have not gotten hired by anybody. And those people will be going through the academy just like everybody else. But they pay for their own uniforms, they pay for their own equipment, they pay for whatever training, they pay for the cost of the academy. And to the school, those are known as FTESs, full-time enrolled students. And that's how schools get paid by the state, through FTESs. So those people generally come in thinking, I'll get into the academy, and then they'll see what a good guy I am, and I'll get hired. And that's not necessarily the case. If you're in a time when there's a lot of competition for a job, maybe that's the way to go. If you're at a time when there's not that many job openings, or I'm sorry, it was ground, and there's a lot of job openings, I would go try to get hired first and have the city pay for your time, pay for your equipment, pay for all of the things that are necessary. When I went to the academy in we had people from outside areas of the state, a couple people from border cities, and they got put up in actually a great hotel, right on the beach. I'm sure the city didn't know what they were doing with that one, and then were paid while they were here, and got a per diem for food and all of those ideas, or all of those things. So make sure you're in really good shape before you start the academy, because you're going to need to be, not so much because it's so tremendously challenging, but the fact that you don't want to be playing catch-up. If you're playing catch-up, there's a good chance you're going to have issues. California has mostly stress academies. The 3 academies that are talked about in the book are the stress academy, the collegiate academy, and a trade school kind of approach. A lot of states back east will use the trade school approach, and many will have people that will be in the field before they go to the academy, working as police officers. When I started, you could work up to 6 months in the field before you actually went to an academy, which, sounds amazing now that I'm looking back on it. Expect a lot of attrition in the academy. I've put a video up from Dallas, I don't know, from a police academy off the internet, and it kind of goes through what a day looks like in the academy. So those are the things that you're going to see. The attrition rates can be upwards of 50%. That's narrowed down quite a bit because of the pre-academy course. People have a better idea what they're getting into, and many decide, you know what, nah, I don't think so. I don't want to do this. And a lot of people drop out because of injuries, because they don't go into the academy in good physical condition, and then now they're all of a sudden running 20 miles a week, and where they've been running a couple miles a month, and now so their physical attributes are really stressed, and they don't do well. The last thing I want to talk about today is field training. California runs basically 2 different models. One model is the San Diego model, and that's been around since the 1970s. You go out with a training officer and with ever-increasing levels of responsibility throughout a 16-week program. And it's phased. You have phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Phase 1 is only a couple weeks long, And most agencies get guys doing stuff right away, get officers doing things right away. Um, so you could be in phase 1 and be taking full-blown crime reports and arrest reports. It depends on the agency, the FTO philosophy within the agency. Phase 2, you start to deal with more complex issues, and you have a rather thick book of things that must be either demonstrated, explained, or performed, and then signed off by the field training officer. The book stuff is really a pain in the neck because you go over stuff so fast. But you've only got 16 weeks, and you got to handle a radio. You're not sitting in a classroom for 16 weeks. You're in a police car, getting calls for service, having to respond to crimes. And there's not that much time. Phase 3, as you move through phase 3, you should be at the end to where you can handle a car pretty much by yourself. Things that people don't do well, writing skills. More and more people that I saw in the last few years of my career were losing their jobs because of writing skills. Just couldn't do it. Second thing that you see frequently is inability to multitask, to listen to the radio, talk to your partner, think about a crime, look for vehicle code violations. All of those things going on at the same time. Multitasking is a really big issue. And then the one that became huge, and I think a lot has to do with online courses and social media. And that's the idea of, right on my head, of being able to connect with people, to talk to people. They don't have, trainees, a lot just don't have the ability to engage with people. And that's not a thing you can have in law enforcement. You need good social skills. You need to be able to talk to anybody, whether it's a homeless guy with a mental illness or whether it's a PhD physicist from a local university who's having trouble with their daughter who wants to go out and party all night. You got to be able to effectively talk to both groups of people, and that's not an easy task. So the washout rate in the San Diego model, the FTO program as it's called now, is anywhere from 15 to 40%. The second type of model or field training is known as the PTO, the Police Training Officer course. And that's very student-centered. There's a lot of things such as journaling. It has a lot of really good aspects to it. You still have the book you have to deal with. There's a push to get people into their communities and doing more in the communities, things of that nature, learning about the community. Not every agency does the PTO model. Many are resistant because it's so different from the FTO model. And I was raised in the FTO model, then everybody else should be too. If I could pass it, then everybody should. So those are the things to think about when it comes to field training. Make sure you spend the time on the PowerPoint. I bet you're happy that you're all done with actual productive work, except for the final. I'd start working on the final now. Think about how the midterm was. It's going to be very much the same. With all that being said, been a good class. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned some stuff. If you're thinking about law enforcement, I hope it brought you along a little bit more. If you were thinking about research, hopefully you're sitting back going, well, this job's a lot more complex than I thought it was. If you're thinking about law school, hopefully it began to whet your appetite a little bit for criminal law and things that in that part of the legal profession. With all that being said, thank you very much for a good class, and I will see you in class.